And let's talk about Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter.
Well,
Who'd you work with first?
Johnny
Uh-huh.
I did the live album at the Fillmore East, Johnny Winter and album. I knew Ricky Derringer from before Columbia Records when he used to hang out at Steve Paul's Scene on the West Side, you know, a music place that Kenny Rankin and John Hammond Jr. and I can't think now, all sorts of early musicians came out of that place. And I hung out there with a clique of people, musicians, guys that I was producing at Studio 3. And there was a girl named Janice who used to hang out with us at that club. And this redheaded, freckled chick who used to drink herself silly and pass out at the table. And I said one night, I said, "Gee, where's Janice?" And they said, "She's singing with some group called Big Brother or something. She just started singing with these guys." I said, "Janice sings?" I think that's the last. I don't remember seeing her after that. But so people like that hung out at the scene. Tiny Tim, who I ended up a few years ago recording his last record.
Oh, yeah.
I saw Mr. Presley tiptoeing through the tulips. I think he was on stage singing it when he died.
Wow.
So that's full circle.
Yeah. Johnny Winter to Tiny Tim in 5 minutes.
So Johnny Winter, and then, you know, I did some tracking with him in the studio, just some records. There were a few, you know, at Columbia, a lot of artists were, you know, dispersed between us engineers. So, you know, Glenn Kolotkin worked on some. I'm not sure if Don Palouse did. I can't think of, I know the guy who did Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo now, but I can't think of his name. I'll throw it in later if I think of it, but I was at all those sessions too, or I'd be in and out because Columbia was a 7-story building and the equipment was on all the different floors, and you might need a 16-track spare machine, and you'd go down to the 3rd floor and grab a machine and drag it upstairs. Actually, I said 3rd floor. There wasn't a 3rd floor. There was a 2nd and a 4th because Studio B went from the 2nd floor to the 4th floor. But on the 4th floor, all the mixing rooms were all in the hallways with just machine after machine of whatever you needed. Equalizers and compressor racks and delay machines and tape decks and things like that. Processing gear.
Wow. About how many engineers were on staff at Columbia when you were there?
Well, I worked at night, which was nice because I got 10% more for everything I did. Don Meehan, there was Pete Weiss, Tim Gielen, Glenn Kolotkin. Did I say Don Palouse already?
You mentioned it,
I forget. A few people, probably 8 or 9 people. Sometimes you'd get to go down to the studio and do a session. You might be booked for a session in Studio B downstairs, which was the big room where Miles worked all the time. Miles Davis worked there. I did Bobby Vinton there with 40-piece orchestras, my first really big orchestral things. And then there was a smaller studio on the 6th floor called Studio E. That's where I did a lot of stuff with Tom Rush, which was the first Dolby album. I actually engineered the first Dolby released 16-track, multi-track Dolby album called Tom Rush. It was the Drive-In Wheel album. I think the Cowboy Junkies cover, which really blew my mind when I was working with over at Space.
Right.
And the audience said, "We want Drive-In Wheel," and I said, "My Drive-In Wheel? What are they talking about?" That was great.
Jim also does quite a bit of live sound up at Space in Evanston, right here in Evanston.
The greatest club in the world.
Hey!
It is. It's really a wonderful club.
Yeah.
I hate to say space because I'll be doing that.
So, the live at the Fillmore East, Johnny Winter.
Right, here's the silver bike. That was for Bang Records. That's also a terrible asset. It's distorted
Yeah.
like crazy, but the single was great.
What was it like working with Johnny?
Well, of course, I never thought he could actually see me because, I thought he was half blind.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'd see him at the club or something, he'd always call me over. He's a great musician, great band, Ricky Derringer. Oh, that's what I started to say about Steve Paul scene was Ricky hung out there, so I knew him from the scene. And, a great musician. Everybody knows. I mean, he's probably a great model for most guitar players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who doesn't know Johnny's?
Did he have a lot of specifics about what he wanted from the recording? I mean, I would think he'd want to talk to you about how you'd mic his amp or what kind of sound he was looking for.
No, there wasn't much about that. I was pretty stuck up about my miking then. I didn't let people, it's like, well, you're the musician. You play what you want to play and let me handle how the mics go.
Yeah.
And there were styles at Columbia anyway where in those days, you mic'd an amp 45 degrees and maybe 2 feet higher than the amplifier aimed at the speakers. And I changed that a little, but I started moving a little closer to the amp. And no, we didn't have too many issues about that. I think that was part of my problem, was that I was a little invisible as an engineer because things always went well.
Mm-hmm.
And Ricky was the producer, so he told everybody what to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't really involve myself that much
Yeah.
with that.
How was recording?
Just a nice bunch of guys. They were always nice. Ricky was especially a nice guy, very friendly guy. I'd spend a lot of time he had a beautiful townhouse down on 22nd Street in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
The big backyard that overlooked everybody else's backyard. It was like a park inside the buildings.
Nice. How was recording at the Fillmore?
Man, today they have trucks to do that.
Yeah.
We had electronics in cases, and you carried all these cases downstairs to the basement. And the tape deck was in one. You had to hook everything up and then run lines down there. It was only 8-track.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was an 8-track. I remember having a big scene with the producer of, was it Weather Report or somebody I was recording, and he insisted that I put the keyboard players 2 keyboards on the same track so he could have a track open for overdubbing.
Mm-hmm.
And we fought about it for 10 minutes, and I said, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. I don't know what he's going to be playing. How can I mix his 2 keyboards together?
Mm-hmm.
Paul, I can't think of the piano player's name, well-known keyboard player. And a few days later, I'm walking by one of the mixing rooms, and I hear them talking about dumbass engineer put the keyboards together, and I blasted through the door, and I said, he made me do it. I said, we fought about it, and he insisted that I do it, and he said, he's the producer, and he'll take the blame for it if it's a problem. And you see this guy right here? That's the guy. And I walked out the door. I mean, they'd always try to nail you for something.